The aftermath of a hurricane is one of the most stressful periods that you're ever going to live in your lifetime. For one, just like we saw at the start of today's video, there's a lot of needless car accidents. On today's video, we're going to talk about the actual aftermath of Hurricane Milton and Helene on Bradenton, Florida, and what we can expect in the coming days, weeks, months, and even years of a lengthy recovery process from a hurricane. This area hasn't been hit by a direct landfall in something like over 100 years, so the people here really don't know what they're getting into in the coming days. For one of the most difficult things and realizations of a hurricane aren't the troublesome first few days, but it's the prolonged recovery. It's weeks, months later to find out that your favorite restaurant that closed down before the hurricane was never going to open up again. It's being stuck in these long gas lines like we see here on the left. Those things will go away in the few days that come. Eventually, everybody will have power again. Everybody will have gas available. These are the troubles of the beginnings of a hurricane recovery. And while not having fuel and not having electricity is difficult, eventually even the people who have the most difficult situations with electricity will get their power back. But that's not the end of a hurricane recovery. And since this area hasn't been affected by a hurricane like this, the people here don't really understand what's to come next. Luckily, there's somebody here from Southwest Florida to teach these rookies what's to come. So on social media, I've seen people bragging about how, well, at least we're not going to have to deal with snowbird traffic this year. Are you kidding me? Let me explain to you what's going to happen with traffic. Right now, most people haven't came back. A lot of people who evacuated are doing the wise thing and waiting until they restore power to come back, because it's better to be in a hotel somewhere else with air conditioning and a TV than to be stuck here with nothing. In the coming days, what will happen is that the people will start to return. But most of those people will retire and they weren't really doing anything with their lives to begin with. But now they have hundreds of tasks that they need to accomplish, from rebuilding their properties, buying all the things they're going to have to buy, cleaning up their properties, checking on people. There's going to be a lot more traffic from the locals now than there was before. On top of that, all the cleanup crews and all of the construction and power crews, those people will be here for months to come. The construction traffic is more aggravating than any of the old, let's say, the snowbird traffic could ever be. You're talking semi-trucks, trucks with trailers, big loud F-350s. These people are here to stay for a very long time, and many of the power recovery efforts that are happening now are only preliminary, which means that those people are actually going to have to stick around even after they restore power to make some long-term contributions to the infrastructure of power and light. So those people are not going to be going anywhere, at least not all of them, but some of them are going to have to stay for a while. The sign companies, the roofing companies, all those people, more aggravating than tourists, are going to be in our streets more than you could imagine. And it's going to create somewhat of a miniature economy around the hurricane recovery, which will be the most aggravating traffic you'll ever experience in your lifetime. I remember it took about a month for Hurricane Ian to actually get to that point, but eventually the aftermath, like the first, from let's say the first month is pretty chill. After that, when things start going back to normal and people start to rebuild, those 3 to 4 months are the most aggravating period of your lifetime. But who told you the snowbirds aren't coming? Where do you get this idea that snowbirds won't come down here this year? No, they're coming down here. For one, when it gets snow and cold, it's going to happen. People are going to come to Florida simply because it's warm. It doesn't matter how messed up things are down here. A lot of people are going to continue to come down here. But the ones that own properties, they have to come down here. And not only do they have to come down here, but now they have to have an extended stay down here. That's right. They have to fix their properties, get contractors, builders, roofers, all types of services for these properties, and then the remodeling process, all the new tile, the new kitchen cabinets, all the things that were destroyed, all that has to be put back in, those people are going to be here longer than usual. So this idea that people are spreading in social media here in Bradenton, Sarasota, that at least we're not going to have to deal with the snowbirds, bless your heart, it's easy to tell you're rookies. But it's understandable because you don't have the experience and the callous that I do as a veteran hurricane survival specialist to teach you some of the things that you have not learned in Sarasota and Bradenton. And again, bless your hearts, you're going to learn a few things in your lifetime here. I don't even know what the word callous means. I just thought I could throw it in there so I could sound sophisticated. Take a look at all the traffic leaving Anna Maria Island. All this traffic here is people heading eastbound in the afternoon. Give it a month. Give it a month. You'll find out how wrong your assumptions were, that at least now we're not going to have any more traffic for a while. It's like the most retarded conclusion you can come up with. And I've seen more than one person post it. So this is a general idea that people here in Bradenton have. Again, bless their hearts. They've never been through a hurricane to understand how chaotic Bradenton is going to become maybe in a few weeks. You're going to have all the traffic and congestion from the people that are trying to rebuild their lives. You're going to have the people who own properties who have to come down here, and not just for a few weeks. They're going to have to come down here for months on end. The traffic is going to become just a nightmare. You have no idea. So I hope you like the sound of F-350s because this is only getting started. Eventually, the traffic and congestion will be the most nightmare you've ever seen in your whole entire lifetime. Mark my words. Right now, we're not seeing traffic. It's not going to stay like that. This is going to become a very chaotic scene. And you're going to find out, like I said, that many of those restaurants that boarded their doors are not going to open. For one, the big franchises like the Taco Bells and Burger Kings and places like that, a lot of those places are going to do some math and they're going to be like, yeah, we don't need this location anymore. It's not worth spending $100,000 on a sinking ship. A lot of those types of restaurants, they're going to stay boarded up. They're not going to open. And it's going to take a while for you to figure out. They're not going to make an announcement and say, well, you know, this restaurant here failed. They're not going to do that. You'll eventually figure out that for months and months, places that you thought were going to open back up are not going to open back up. And before you might have had 20 dining options in your neighborhood, you might go down to 10. And some of those are going to be restaurants that had a lot of damage and they didn't have enough money to rebuild, or the business wasn't going good to begin with. So now they've realized it isn't worth rebuilding. We're talking big chain restaurants that from a mathematical standpoint know that it's not going to work out. They're going to close hands down. Pharmacies could also close. You just don't know what's going to happen. A lot of people close their doors now, and this is a great opportunity for businesses that were failing and that want to go out kind of secretly, silently, without being noticed. The timing couldn't be better for those people to board up their businesses, never have to open them up again, and never have to give a public expression of why their business failed, whether it's a small business or whether it's a larger business. In general, these businesses that are boarding up now, there's no guarantee that they're going to open back up. And I can tell you that some of the businesses that will never open back up might catch you by surprise. You might be waiting for your local Taco Bell or Burger King or pharmacy or small restaurant to open their doors again. And sadly, it may never freaking happen. And you're not going to know that right away. That's going to take a while for you to figure out. But regardless, over the next few months, every business isn't going to open its doors. Some businesses might need 3, 4, 6, 10 months to recover, to rebuild and get their business the way they needed it. So don't think that every business is just going to be open in a week or two. It's not going to happen. Businesses are going to need sometimes even over a year to rebuild. And when they go to rebuild, they may just scrap the concept as a whole and do something different. All right, guys, so we stopped behind this little area here that has a lot of homelessness, and we found homeless people that were in the area, and we shared with them some food that we had here at the house that honestly, if we didn't share it, we weren't going to eat it, and it would have even gone bad if we didn't eat it. So it's not like it costs me anything to do it, but we did stop in this little area, find some homeless people, and share something with them. I'm not going to show you exactly where their spot was because I don't want to expose their spot to people from out of town, but the locals might know the spots where people hang out. And anyways, we stopped by. I had in the back seat a nice cooler with a few things, and there was people here on the side of the road who needed some stuff, so we were able to give them some water, some food, and I'm letting you guys know that we do this because a lot of people have been asking me, do you help the homeless and stuff like that, or you give back to community? I do. Now, am I going to record every single time I give people something and put it on social media? That's absolutely retarded. Hurricanes are a great opportunity to practice being shareable with other people and sharing the things you have. And there are people right now who are very desperate. First of all, when I hit the streets in Bradenton today, I saw the most aggressive and desperate panhandling that I have ever seen ever in a while. People that are on the streets are just going through a lot of stuff right now. And, even the food that you think is not that much makes a difference to them. Sometimes you might have bought some food and you're like, what am I going to do with this food? There's people now that need it. So as you can see here, we're on US 41 heading south. We're about to turn onto Highway 70, which is heading towards Onico and Lakewood Ranch. Now notice that the Dairy Queen is still boarded up. The Starbucks, I don't think it's open yet. A lot of these businesses haven't opened yet. Notice how traffic congestion is a complete nightmare, and it's going to get a lot worse. Mark my words, those people that think we're not going to have traffic this year, they have no idea what they're talking about. They've never been through a hurricane. The traffic this year is going to be the worst any year possible. It's going to be aggravating. And it's not going to happen right now. It's going to take a while to get to that point. The people who think that real estate prices are going to go down because of the hurricane, because people are going to be discouraged to come to Florida, well, they're even more mistaken. After Hurricane Ian in Fort Myers, real estate prices did not go down. They actually increased for a few reasons. One is simple supply and demand. The supply is limited and the demand is higher. And not only do you have the local demand, on top of that, you have the demand from people who lost their houses, and you have the demand from people who are working in this area and may establish working in this area for a prolonged period of time, and they need temporary housing. Like the people working in the construction and aftermath, those people don't have a place to live. Right now they're camping outside or they're living in a tent or something. They're not going to do that forever. They're going to become permanent down here. So you have all the pressure from the construction workers. You got all the pressure from all of the government agencies that are going to have to be down here. You got all the pressure from the rich people who lost their beach homes, have to rebuild their beach homes. They have to be in the area somehow. They're most likely going to start to rent properties that normally regular people would rent. That means that the rental supply is going to decrease. You got all the people that are homeless. So now you got the house that they used to own is vacant because it's being remodeled, but then they're going to have to go and absorb another house in the meantime temporarily while that house is being remodeled. So it turns the local demand for real estate, it like literally doubles, but then you also have other people who need to come down here, so then it triples. With Hurricane Ian, there was a YouTuber who we're going to call Revenue Insulting, who made a video talking about how real estate prices in Fort Myers were finally going to ease up after Hurricane Ian. And I immediately made a reply video to this clown letting him know that that wasn't going to happen, and it didn't happen. But he is technically, supposedly, he's an economist, so he has a degree for economy, but he doesn't really understand anything about a hurricane. This is what happens with hurricanes. People who have absolutely no idea what they're talking about. Keep in mind that most of these YouTubers who make videos about Florida moved from New York right after COVID. They've never been through a hurricane. They don't know anything about going through a hurricane. They don't know Florida. They don't know anything about Florida. They don't know anything about hurricanes. So these are people who are spreading misinformation, and people, because of their credentials that they're YouTubers and they're realtors and this and that, believe all that garbage, buy into it, and they make some horrible decisions because it's the blind leading the blind. But let me to give you some words of experience from a wise old man called Jose. No, real estate prices are not going to go down. Demand for real estate is not going to go down. In fact, we have homeless people now who lost their homes. Their homes are not going to exist for a while. They're being rebuilt. They're going to need to find a place to live. I was hanging out by the leasing office to the apartments where I live recently, and there was people from Longboat Key, Anna Maria Island coming over here trying to figure out how to rent an apartment. These are people who've been homeowners for decades. They've never rented an apartment before, and they're trying to figure out, hey, if we want an apartment, how does this work? How much does it cost? Do I need this, that? There's individuals who have been homeowners their whole entire lives, and now they're going to look at the prospect of renting, and it's almost hilarious because they don't even understand how to rent a property or how rental works because they've never done it. They think they just rent a house for 3 to 4 months. And I'm thinking in the back of my mind, I'm over here in this conversation, these people lost their home on one of the islands, and they're thinking it's going to take 3 months for them to rebuild their property. I'm sitting here like, it's probably going to take at least a year. Like, the 1 year lease may not be enough for you to regain your life. So a lot of people whose lives are in wrecks right now, well, they think in 3 to 4 months their lives are going to go back to normal. I don't think they understand that it's going to take a good 1 year lease to get their lives back in order. There's people trying to get 3 to 4 month leases now because they don't really realize that they actually need a 1 year lease, but they'll have to figure that out in the long run. There's only so many workers here. Besides that, Anna Maria Island, Bradenton Beach, there's only 2 bridges to get on these islands. And there's only so many workers that you can fit on these islands. There's so many people willing to work in construction. It's not going to be easy to find workers. And when you do find workers, they're going to spend 3 hours a day just trying to get on these islands to rebuild these houses, which eventually means that the people that are working there, if they need to go to the Home Depot, it's going to take them an hour to go get a box of nails at the Home Depot, or an hour each way. I don't think people really understand the logistics of what needs to happen here, and that will lead to people thinking, oh, I could just, a 3-month lease will get me there. And it's not. It's going to take you a year to get your life back together. But again, this is part of the things of realizing the reality of the aftermath of a hurricane versus what you think the aftermath of a hurricane is. I don't know how long the beaches are going to be open. For all I know, in 2 weeks, the beaches could be open. The water could look beautiful, and they could be packed with people enjoying a beautiful beach day. Despite the fact madness and congestion could take place here, the beaches could go back to normal in weeks. It's possible. It's absolutely possible that 2 weeks from now, the beaches are cleared up and things are back to normal. Or we could have contamination from the red tide, and the entire coastline could become literally uninhabitable. Now, one of the reasons that I moved to the Sarasota-Bradenton area is because this area hasn't had red tide to the same degree that Fort Myers and Naples did. Literally, one of the reasons we had to move out of North Naples is because the red tide was so persistent that we were always sick, and it was just unbearable. Now, the Venice area up here is one of those areas where the red tide's pretty bad, but I don't think, north of Sarasota and Bradenton, this area hasn't had that persistent red tide, and it is possible that we could hit a red tide event unlike any other we've had before here, because now you have a lot of contamination to hit the waterway, so the beaches could go back to being normal in 2 weeks, or it could become completely uninhabitable. That's not something we're going to know right off the bat. Now we're going to head into a car accident scene that took place here, and the accident happens right here. I'm going to play it with audio first so you guys can see what happens, and then we'll talk a little bit about the accident. Highway 70 or 301, for some reason, they dug a trench there. And I'm sure this isn't the first accident that trench has caused. I have no idea why they did that. It seems like they could almost sue the construction crew because it's the most retarded thing I've ever seen, and it's caused accidents already. In the case of this accident, it was a white Jeep, and for some reason, you can hear him screeching his wheels. He decided that he needed to slam on the brakes before he got to this thing, not looking in his rearview mirror to see that there was a car plowing at him because there was a green light. Now, this is a very common type of accident where somebody is slamming on the brakes while somebody else is flirting it through a green light, and that's likely what caused the accident. But you can hear that the Jeep, he was slamming on the brakes before the accident, and that would suggest that he caused the accident, because if he had just drove at the normal rate he was going across this thing, just like me and that black truck did, he wouldn't have caused an accident. So I'm pretty sure that this Jeep caused the accident because you can hear him slam on the brakes before the crash. All the screaming was me, and it was that's what I do. I'm inside the truck screaming. I hear this guy slam on the brakes. I'm like, ah! And then he hits it, and then I'm screaming again. It's just a little dramatic effect I do. It's kind of become a staple of my videos, so I have to keep running with it now. I think it was at one point something happened while we were doing a video and I screamed because I got scared, but then it's continued as a theme throughout our channel, so welcome to our YouTube channel. So I found this line here for gas. Now this line seemed relatively short, but I'll tell you, it took about an hour and 10 minutes, I think, to get through this line. It was supposed to be just a quick, oh, here, there's only 8 or 9 cars in front of us, but Little did I know that this line was going to take more time from my life than I ever expected. I do believe that by Monday, at least in the Bradenton area, the fuel shortage situation will have come to an end, or at least decrease significantly, where access to fuel will become normal. But you still have a lot of people running generators that don't have power and they need more fuel. So I do believe that maybe by Wednesday this will be a thing of the past, I hope, of next week. So, I think in a few days we'll have gas again and things will go back to normal there. That's not going to be a prolonged problem. I hope not, and it shouldn't be. I think by Monday we'll be back to normal. I don't know if you've noticed, but most of the time when they open these fuel pumps, they have to have law enforcement presence. That is because people have been fighting. Now, I heard on the news, I don't know if it's confirmed or not, that there have even been shootings when they open up these gas stations because people get so angry they fight. I wouldn't doubt it. I haven't confirmed those news reports, but I've heard those stories, and I wouldn't doubt it. But I've seen fights already in Sarasota, and I wouldn't doubt it. It just seems like it's normal for people. Like, you got people here like this, they are trying to cut the line. Now, they could have parked behind me and got into this line, but they decided that they were going to try to force their way into this line. And it's people like that start doing stuff. Now, you see this black truck, they're rushing them out of the way. They're, flooring their gas, trying to get them to move out of the way because they're trying to cut the line. So this is the type of situation you get immediately when they open up a gas pump. You got people that just want to cut the whole line, and they do it. I remember when I lived in Naples, Florida, there was people who would pretend like their car ran out of gas and then by hand push the car to the pump. So they thought, oh, since our car ran out of gas, now we're able to push our car by hand to the front of the line. But the gas station closed down, and then when they realized that there was no gas, they got in the car and drove off. So it was just a big scam so they could get gas. And that was a blue BMW in Naples, Florida, so with a bunch of young kids inside. So people get crafty with coming up with all types of scams to get gas. That's one of them. We ran out of gas and now we got to push the car to the front of the line. That's a common one. The other one is where somebody has a gas can and they'll pay for somebody else's gas as long as they get to fill up their gas can. So they're going to have to pay for somebody else's fuel, but they're also going to be able to cut the line and fill up their gas cans without having to wait in line. Time is money after all. So you'll see people with gas cans offering people at the front of the line, hey, I'll pay for your gas, just let me fill this up. And, there's all types of scams that people run at these gas pumps when there's no fuel, there's fuel shortages. And then you got the people from Venezuela, you got the people from like all Latin America. They're used to fuel shortages, so I'm sure they know 20 or 30 different scams that can take place that the locals here have never seen before. So there's definitely 20 or 30 different scams out there from other countries that people start to implement during these situations because they're already schooled and versed at fuel shortages. But the sad thing is that people's temperaments will not improve in any way or another simply because they get their power back on. The people who are angry now are going to remain angry just indefinitely. It happened in Fort Myers, and sadly it's going to happen here. Notice that by the time that I got to the pump, there's no longer blue skies. It's already nighttime, so quite a lot of time passed, even though there was only 8 people in front of us, because for some reason or another, people decide to take their time at these events. Now, they also have to go inside the gas station to pay inside because, again, a lot of times the credit card machines aren't running, the internet's not working, so now you got to pay inside with cash. I got out because I noticed that there's a few scenarios going on that I wanted to just address. Like the car in the front, it was like the fuel pump was on the wrong side, and people are pulling up to the pumps, and they're so desperate to get to the pump that they're not paying attention to see which side of the car the gas pump is on. So that was one scenario up there. Notice that this car was in reverse. Now this guy thought he was in drive or park. He was actually in reverse, and at one point he actually did. I think I told him like, hey dude, you are in reverse, because eventually he was gonna plow through our car, and he did actually almost do it. So when I noticed, there he goes, I told him, hey, yeah. So anyways, it's just little details like that get people aggravated. And there's actually a fuel pump available up front for me, but this guy needed to move a few feet forward, and so we had to guide Katie through here. She had to drive on the sidewalk, and it's Katie driving, so he figured it out. He's like, yeah, she looks like she's gonna run me over, so we got to get her to drive over the sidewalk. But the point being that, you almost have to get out and kind of orchestrate things a little bit to get things going, because people just can't figure things out. They're parking on the wrong side. They don't realize that maybe there's cash only. So imagine you wait in this long line forever. You get up to the front, right? You've been here for 2 hours, and you realize, oh, it's cash only. I don't have any cash on me. Oh, the ATM's down because there's no internet signal. So stuff like that gets people aggravated, and those people are trying to figure out what they're going to do next. And the people behind them are like, hey, if you don't have money, you got to leave. But I'm waiting here. It creates problems. So lots of issues unfolding at these gas pumps. That's why they almost need police at these pumps, because people are actually fighting at these gas pumps to get fuel. All right, so I eventually was able to get fuel and leave this gas station behind and continue with my day. I thought it was going to take 20-30 minutes. It actually took over an hour, but we now have a full gas tank, and it might have almost been a waste of time. Now, keep in mind, I have vehicles there on the left that I got to get around because they're all blocking that lane. And yep, the right lane, when you turn on the 70, is being blocked as well with all the people in line. So it's kind of chaotic. Notice there's no traffic here right now. Earlier in the day when people were leaving the job sites, it was a complete mess. It looks kind of empty now, and people are assuming it's going to stay like that. I guarantee you it won't. Now, as I'm looking around the area, there are some people who are going to spend 2, maybe even 3 weeks without power. Hopefully, it's not more than that. In previous hurricanes, we saw an onslaught of law enforcement from other places. It's been minimal so far. We would see power crews from all over the country. Well, there's a situation going on in the Carolinas now. There's a situation in Georgia and North Florida as well. It may take some people more time to get their power back on than they would be happy with. There's been a shortage of law enforcement. There's been a shortage of a lot of things in Florida, and we were promised that when we had a hurricane, this wouldn't happen. Well, the state of Florida, for some reason, sent resources to other states, and a week later, we get hit with a hurricane, and now we need these resources here. Those resources didn't belong in North Carolina. They belonged here in Florida, and now the people in Florida are finding out that we're short on law enforcement, we're short on highway patrol. Literally, it's been a madhouse. Gas stations open back up and they can't get enough cops. People start fighting at the... It's been scary to get fuel in Florida. Getting gas has become scary because you just don't know what could unfold at those pumps, and there isn't enough law enforcement present in the freaking state of Florida because all those resources were promised to another state, and now we get hit with another hurricane and we don't have resources. We don't have enough law enforcement. The fuel shortages are, I believe, questionable to a degree. They promise us this wouldn't happen again. And the people that are waiting for their power to get back on, I think 95% of us are going to get our power back very soon. But those mobile home parks that I'm seeing where like the wires are tangled up, and there's aluminum stuck up on the wires, that's not going to get resolved right away. That's going to take a lot of time to get resolved. So I believe it's going to be a little bit more unfortunate for some particular individuals in some particular areas to get these resources back. Compared to other hurricanes, we're not seeing the onslaught of workers. And I've noticed that I've been talking to the power crews that I find in the only state that has actually sent things to Florida, like as far as like rescue crews, like on a noticeable scale here, is people from Texas, South Texas at that. They're all these like South Texas Mexican crews, like from the U.S.-Mexican border. They're the only people who've actually sent anybody to Florida. During other hurricanes, we'd have people from Canada, Minnesota, Maine, New York. I mean, every single state, not only in the U.S., but in Canada, would send resources to the state of Florida to get power back and restored promptly. And this hurricane, for some reason that I don't understand, the only crews that have showed up are from Texas, and particularly southern Texas, not even the entirety of Texas. Just for some reason, the crews from southern Texas came here, and they're the only crews that I've seen here. So the state of Florida, for some reason, has compromised a lot of resources in other states, and now we have a crisis here, and we don't have anything. I can think back to at least 2 hurricanes where the power crews that restored our power weren't even from the United States, they were from Canada. So usually you get this influx of people from other places. But now hotels, and I don't know if you guys know this, since the last hurricane, hotels in Florida used to be $100. You can't find a hotel in Florida for less than $300. Who in their right mind is going to come to the state of Florida to help us when a hotel costs $300 a night? They get paid very well. I've talked to these individuals, they get paid very well. But when you look at a $300 hotel stay, that's very discouraging for the people that are coming here to work. It's not worth it for them. A few areas, people here do have a lot of equipment, but again, some of these infrastructure repairs are going to be more complicated than you could wrap your head around. So the vast majority of us are going to get our power back in a few days. Maybe they said by the 17th, so we're looking at least maybe another week before the average person gets their power back who hasn't got it back yet. But the people on the islands, the people who are in mobile home parks where the electric posts are tangled between mobile homes, that's going to be a different story for those particular areas. All right, so we're going to enter the Braden Run neighborhood here in Lakewood Ranch. And back in here, I think a tornado came through here. They've been working non-stop to get the power back. And on this particular evening, like 5 minutes after this video was filmed, people got their power back who hadn't got it. So people here had spent, since the hurricane without power, they got their power back. They had to literally replace every single post, just about. They were all tangled. They were just a mess. You can see even late at night, it's already 7:14 in the evening. These guys have worked all day long, and they're just now starting to get in their trucks to leave. These guys have been working nonstop to make sure that those posts get put back up, because this community literally needed the entire thing redone, from the posts, the wires, the whole thing needed to be reinstalled, because it looked like a small tornado might have come through here perhaps. And in this community, as soon as we left, you'll see the fire trucks coming in. That is because they finally turned the power back on, and usually it's good to have on-hand firefighters and all that in case there's a fire when they turn the power back on. It's also possible that the workers left in just a rush, that they could have gotten into an accident. I don't know exactly which of the two it was, but you'll notice that when we approach the people that are working, when they leave, they hop in their trucks and they just floor it. These guys have worked all day long, but they're tired, they're overworked, and when they leave these job sites, they just want to drive really fast and get out of these construction sites, and that can sometimes cause a lot of accidents. You can see here, watch how anxious these guys are to leave this construction site. They're in their trucks. Let me just show you guys these guys leaving here. They're just flooring the gas. They're just tired. They've worked all day. And, you know, a lot of times when that happens, they actually get into accidents because they're just in a massive rush to get out of these places. But anyways, finally, people in Braen Run had to have almost all the posts re-put in. Like, all these posts were all down. That's a lot of work, and they got it all done in 4 to 5 days, I believe, or something. So it's incredible how quickly, with as much destruction as this neighborhood had, that they were able to go in there and change almost every single one of those posts. It was just complete destruction. There were posts that were literally snapped in half by the wind. I'm almost certain it was a tornado that came through this neighborhood. As these guys all went home from a long day of work, fire crews rushed into the neighborhood. I'm going to assume that the reason they're rushing into the neighborhood is because finally power got restored, and they want to make sure that no fires, let's say, start all of a sudden. So chaos and madness abound in the aftermath of a hurricane, and people's patience is going to have to stretch a lot further than they can imagine. Ambulances, road noise, construction equipment, all that, get used to it. It's not going to go anywhere. And as we saw today, we even saw a completely unnecessary car accident because people are just in a rush. They're so agitated that they're literally causing accidents needlessly. A lot of people get hurt during hurricanes. People fall off ladders. People get into car accidents. People with heavy equipment. The list goes on and on. I did want to drive to the gas stations that are further out into the suburbs to see if they had fuel. And judging by the fact that many gas stations had fuel, I'm going to assume that finally it looks like gas is going to become plentiful. So some things like gas and restaurants are going to start to open up again, and life will go back to normal for a lot of people. But for others, those who don't get their power back and those who become homeless, it's going to become a very long, lengthy process. You can see this gas station here finally has gas, and the lines were actually not as long as expected in other gas stations. So with that, we can see that gas is starting. Power is back, fuel is back, things are getting back to normal for people. You can see that this gas line here wasn't as long as the one I was stuck in previously. So things are starting to go back to normal, but a lot of these things are going to take a very long time. And in that process, people can become very upset and disgruntled, not just for the short term, but for the long term.